Okay. Excellent. So today we will focus on games, models for games, or how to go about making any models, I guess. So yeah, we will be using Blender. Why Blender? Who knows? But it's free. It has a lot of features that usually a single package program does not have. Usually 3D programs have some sort of way to model and animate and assign materials and render. But often, if you want to like simulate something, or there is actually a game engine built into Blender, so I guess you would make a game from nothing using only Blender, and stuff like painting textures and stuff like that. So yeah, if you are like an indie developer, or if you want to learn 3D, then Blender is pretty great because like everything is in one place, and it's awesome. So yeah, today we are going to build a house, maybe do some landscaping, and maybe when as you know, games usually require some sort of character. So let's see how far we can get in this hour and then half, I guess. And maybe we can manage to create the character also. At least we are now on the same page. You know nothing, and that's good. So 3D world. Does everyone see a picture similar to this? Like there should be a cube and like this sort of layout of Windows. Because if you don't, then I advise you to go to the file menu and load factory settings. It's possible that some Blenders by default have some sort of different arrangement of windows, and maybe there are some models and stuff.
Is new installation shooter?
Yes, it should be. Okay, excellent. So short time. So first of all, navigation. If you use a 2D program, I guess navigation is pretty much obvious. It's just a plane and you look around. Maybe you can zoom in and out. But in 3D there is, as far as you know, one extra dimension. So your mouse is very important, and a mouse with a scroll wheel actually. The scroll wheel is very important. You can zoom, of course, in and out with it, but also you can orbit around the models by clicking on your mouse wheel. And for panning, if you hold down the shift key and click on the mouse wheel, then you can pan around. So basically, zoom, pan, and orbit are the three, always in every 3D program. They are the three basic methods of like navigating around in the space. So if you have mastered those three operations, then you should be, in theory, able to go everywhere in the 3D space. Excellent. So let's get right down to modeling part, because it's the most fun or frustrating, depending. So by default, you should have a cube, a 3D object, a cube, right in the center of the world. Now, a strange thing about Blender is that usually you select things with your left mouse button, but for some reason, there's a good reason actually. You select objects in space, at least in 3D space, with your right mouse button. So by default you have 3 objects, and with the right mouse button you should be able to select them. And if you select them, they turn yellow, or at least have the yellow bounding box, so you can see that they are active and you can do something with those objects. Awesome. And if you have questions, just ask anytime, and doesn't matter if I'm talking. Excellent. Keeramine, pööramine, see. Lihtsalt klikka hiire ratta peale. Klikka hoia all ja siis liigud hiirt. Hiireratast, ehk siis seda scrolli.
Ma näen, et teil on uuem versioon 2.7.6.
See ei mängi rolli. See ei mängi mitte rolli. Et jah, shifti ratas on niutamine. And another, I guess, a great thing about Blender is that for every command there is usually at least 3 different ways of doing the exact same thing, or sometimes even more. If you know the program well, it's really great. If you don't, then it might be a little bit confusing, but we try to limit ourselves with only the UI elements. So for example, when you select something, you can see that there are little arrows attached to that object. So if you want to move, let's say the cube, you can just click on the arrows and move the cube in that direction. And maybe some of you have noticed that when you left click, then you reposition this some weird little arrow thing that is also in 3D space, as you can see. That's called the 3D cursor. It has many functions. Maybe we will see some of them, but just for now, just ignore it. Like put it somewhere off if it like distracts you. So yeah. Also, in every 3D program, there are always at least 3 operations or transforms you can do with different objects. Now we are currently translating or moving around some objects, but there are 2 more. If you look down in the bottom part, there's this little arc and also this little stretched out cube, I guess. So the second one is rotation and the third one is scale. So basically, if I click on the little arc, the thing you can see here that changes is called a widget. So let's just call it a widget. So the widget changes to a rotational widget, and depending on the little arc you click, you can turn it in either of the 3 axes. And also the same goes for the scale tool. You can scale it on different axes. So let's say I have displaced and rotated and transformed the object in some ways, but let's say I don't really like it. I messed something up. Option 1 is undo, Control and Z, and Control Shift and Z is redo. So you can undo and redo all the commands you have made. You will probably use undo a lot. So Control Z and Control Shift Z are the commands you will use a lot. But let's say you have made you have gone in the wrong direction a while now, and you don't have enough of the undo commands. And also for like precision placement of objects and restoring some of the transformations. There should be some sort of numbers we can input that like determine the location of the object, for example. This is the 3D panel. Currently there are open 5 different panels. You can change the size and the content of these panels, but just for now, let's say there are some scene layouts or screen layouts. So if you click on this button right here, you can choose between several different presets of these window layouts, and they are named somewhat appropriately. For example, if I want to do some animation, I click this button and the layout changes in such a way that it's like good to do some animations, and so on and so forth. But by default it's just the default, so that's it. So for now, if you want to change the layouts or the composition of the screens, then just use this thing. But yeah, currently there are 5 screens, and you can resize them if you go to the border of 2 different windows. It's yeah, I know it's a little difficult to understand, like where one screen ends and the other one begins. They would be better, but if the cursor changes from the normal mouse to the mouse with 2 different arrows, then that says to you that you can probably rescale the windows. But just in case, if you have like different setups a little bit, and you can resize the windows. But yeah, the 3D window. The 3D window has different parts. Currently there are 2 sub panels of the 3D window open. It's the leftmost panel, where you can see the similar commands if you change the widget. For example, for the move widget, you can also see under transform, there also translate, and you can move it around, rotate, you can turn it, and scale, you can scale it. But this is probably the most not so user-friendly place to start your translations or something. But yeah, for the restoration of some of the transforms, there is also another panel hidden by default. It's hidden in the 3D window. So there is this little plus sign on the right side, and if you press it, another panel should open up. So again, tons and tons of panels and buttons, and it's so confusing, but let's just focus on the most important stuff. So again, location, rotation, scale. As you can see, there are some numbers in here. So if I move the cube, let's say, from the green arrow, then you can see that the location on the Y, under the Y-axis, changes. So basically now you know that when you move it in the green arrow direction, I guess, then that's called the Y-axis. If you move it on the red one, then it's the X-axis, and if you move it from the blue, then it's the Z-axis. And always in Blender, like the Z-axis is always pointing up, and the X-axis is like by default it's like the horizontal axis, and the forward-facing axis is the Y-axis. And also you can hide the other panel by just scaling it to 0 basically. Then you can also reopen it. it's usually a good practice to keep your UI like as clean as possible. Just use the windows you really need and hide the rest. So yeah, we can input some numbers in here. Excellent. So for example, if I want to reset the location, I want to put the cube back to the middle, I just click here and input zeros, and magically the cube goes back to the middle. Same goes for rotation and scale. For scale, if you put a 0 in here, so in that case the cube disappears, because if the scale is 0, then it's kind of like size. It's kind of like the dimensions you can see here, but not quite. It's a little bit different, but just let's say it's like the size of the object. So if you make the scale 0, then it will disappear. It's size 0. It's non-existent basically. So by default, the scale should always be 1. So it's appropriate. A little remark for the navigation. If you click on some object, and let's say I have zoomed really far in for this cube, so it's a little difficult if I, for example, choose the light. I want to get to the light, but I have zoomed in so far that it's like really difficult to actually navigate to that place, because it's like really slow. Another button for navigation that's really useful is the delete button on the numpad, or the dot, actually, like this one in here. Like this button also focuses on your screen to that selected selection, to that selected object. So that's usually pretty useful. Awesome, 20 minutes in and we have managed to slightly move around the cube. Great progress. So now comes the modeling part. Yeah, there are like tons of stuff we can do only on the just on the object level, but no matter how much we like scale it and rotate it, we can't really let's say add legs to this box or something, or make it a character or something, because there are only 4 or actually 8 points that the cube is composed of. So basically we somehow want to add or remove detail, or we want to change the shape of this object somehow. So in order to do that, we have several different modes. Like one mode is for texturing and one is for just moving the object around. We can change the mode from this little panel down here. By default it says object mode, so it refers to the level of in some sort of hierarchy, the level of mode of operation, I guess. So currently we are changing the entire object, but now we want to go to the edit mode. So we want to edit the things that the object is composed of. So yeah, we go to the edit mode. Awesome. If you have some panels open, you can see that there's great change. Some buttons disappear, some appear. So we have some different commands available in the edit mode. Another thing you can see is that now we can select different parts of the same object. That's just different objects. Now we can't select the other objects anymore. For example, in I guess in Maya and maybe also in Max, It's called the sub object level, so we like under the object and we change the object from within basically.
Yes. Hästi kiiresti küsin vahele. Kui mul ei ole seda drop-down menüüd, kus praegu on edit-mode, kas see käib kuskilt mujalt alati?
So if you can't see this menu, it probably means that you have selected something that does not have the option to change the object. So for example, if I choose the light, it doesn't have any other modes besides object mode. But if you select the cube, then it should have. Kus see kuubiku valika siis on?
Ausõna, ei kuubiku peal oli ka. Ma mõtlengi, et äkki on mingisugune teine menüü. Kus seda saab? Siis proovisin seda paljudele šalluga.
Proovid Factory settida?
Jah.
Täpselt sama. See on mingi see on mingi väga spetsiifiline testi versioon, mis kas ta kuskil mujal ei ole. Sest jah, see võib testi ära. So server managed to find the edit mode and successfully enter it. Awesome. Now this is the part that the fun begins, or the endless frustration. You can select the point that the object is composed, but you can also select the edges connecting the dots and the faces that are, I guess, composed of the dots also. But by default you can only choose the points. I guess also in English and in mathematics and stuff, the points are called vertices. So if I say vertex, I refer to this point that all the 3D models are composed of, and vertices are like many of these points. So yeah, but to change the selection mode, I guess if you go to the edit mode, then in this middle part over here you can change the selection mode. So if I want to select edges, I pick the edge selection mode, then I can pick edges. And if I want to pick faces, then I just choose the face selection mode. Excellent. Basically you can also choose edges and faces by just picking many, selecting many vertices by holding down shift. Then you can select many different, or like keep the previous selection, I guess, would be most accurate. So for example, if I select two vertices, it's basically the same as doing one click in the edge selection mode. And if I select 4 vertices, then it's the same as selecting one face, basically. But yeah, edges can have many, or vertices can have many different edges connected to them, and also like faces can have more or less than 4 corners, 4 vertices actually. Awesome. Also for these selection, I guess you can just if you have something selected and you want to deselect it, you can just click another vertex by not holding down the shift, and it will deselect the previous selection. But if, for example, if I want to select everything, all the vertices, or at least all the visible vertices, or none of the vertices, then there is a shortcut. The shortcut is just A. If I press A, then it selects everything or nothing. Yeah. Another great thing about Blender is that for every command there is also a shortcut, some sort of keyboard combination that activates the same command. So for example, if I don't want to like try to select these arrows, I can, for that, also for movement and translation, rotation, scale, I can also use shortcuts, but there are so many that I guess it's easier, for at least for now, to just limit ourselves with the UI elements and buttons. Okay. So I guess 3D modeling comes down to the ability to move vertices around that you have mastered already. For example, if I select two vertices, I can move them around using the exact same widget. So example, if I want to make a slanted angle, then I can just choose two vertices and move them. So I can move them around. The other option is of course I want to remove some of the parts that I have. The third one is that I want to add something. Probably the movement is the easiest one. The selection, there are many different ways to select things also, not just by right clicking them. But for deletion, of course, we have the delete button. But actually deletion isn't that easy either. If I press the delete button, it gives me a menu. So I guess it can be a good thing and also a bad thing. Many different programs just look at the selection mode you have and try to delete the appropriate thing it assumes you want to delete. But in Blender we can, independent of the selection mode, we can choose different things to be deleted from the menu. But just for now, let's say if I want to delete vertices, if I have the vertex selection mode, I will just pick vertices from the deletion menu. If I want to delete edges, I just select the edge selection mode, select edges and pick edges, and faces, I pick faces. So that's probably the most easiest and clearest way to understand it. You can also mix and match them, but it's more understandable if you just pick the thing from the deletion menu you have currently active. Awesome. So for example, if I delete these four vertices and I picked vertices, then everything connected to those vertices also disappears. As you can see, there are like faces that share these vertices. There are many, well actually there are 3 faces that share this vertex. So basically if I delete this vertex, then also all the faces connected to that also disappear. But for example, if I select the face and I pick the face deletion from the menu, then the vertices are still there, just the face disappears. Awesome. Any questions so far?
As I understand, this is the body has no material inside.
Yes.
Zero thickness.
Basically, yes. Well, actually, the CAD programs like show as it has some sort of material in it. but like really, as you always, you can see only the surface area. Like for CAD programs, like I guess you can like do some Boolean operations and stuff, and it like tries to carve away, and it's difficult to get this like infinitely thin face, I guess, in CAD programs.
It's similar like AutoCAD as well.
Yeah.
This is problem.
It might be a problem, it might not. For example, if you want to make as economical models as possible for games, then it's often a great ability to just leave only one face and delete the others. Yeah, real world things usually have some sort of like volume, so yeah, they always have to have that. But yeah, anyway, if you delete something, you get a hole. I guess it can be a hole, it might not be a hole. But anyway, we need a way to fill in that hole, or some way to make that face cover it. So basically we need to select the edge of the hole, so these 4 vertices, and I guess for that command I'm not sure there is a button. Actually, I have never used a button for this command, so I'm not sure if there even is one. Maybe here. Oh, okay. The shortcut is F, it's just the letter F. F like fill, for example. And it creates a face. If we have 2 vertices and we select them, it creates a edge. And if we have at least 3 vertices, the F button creates a face. So the idea is that actually you can't see vertices. They are points in space, and also you can't really see edges. So like in the end, if it's like finally rendered, if you render it in Blender or if you render it in some sort of game engine, you always need faces, because the other things that just aren't visible. That's not really important. We will get there. It's just a demonstration. But yeah, currently we can delete things and fill holes in, I guess. Also, who likes lots of buttons, then there are menus, tiny menus here. But for creating new geometry, there is this mesh menu. It's a massive menu, and also it has some other sub menus in it. So what you should focus on currently are the faces, edges and vertices menu. Familiar words, I hope. So in the face menu, here are some commands that do something with faces, basically. So if you have selected some faces, then in the face menu you will find commands that do something with those faces. Also like edge specific commands and vertex specific commands. And it was where was it? So under faces menu, we want to create faces. So under faces menu, there is also a command make edge face, and as you can see on the right side, there is the shortcut. Shortcut is also often written next to command. So if you sometimes forget the command or want to find out the shortcut, then you can just surf around in the menu and see what's written here. So we can check the shortcut. So yeah, basically that command we just did, it was with an F key. It's called make edge face. and it created a face. Excellent. Now, our first objective is to create a building. Building has let's say it's like this rectangular shape, and it has a slanted roof. And buildings often have doors and windows, so we also need to create those. And if it happens, maybe you messed the shape up somehow. Maybe it's like this mess of twisted polygons and vertices by now. It happens. Then you can always start over. Just go to the object mode, delete the object, and you can create a new one. For creating entirely new objects, we have this add menu. Very important. There are many different types of objects for different purposes. For example, text for text, I guess, and curves and stuff. But currently we focus only on the mesh objects, or the mesh type of objects. So you might not have all these options. I currently have, because there are some add-ons in Blender that enable you to create some different types of or some new objects. But at least you should have these ones from plane to monkey. You should have these. So I guess there are I guess an infinite amount of ways you can model a specific object. You could do it in by using only objects, I guess. For example, I could add a cube. The cube, by the way, appears wherever the 3D cursor is. So that's the first, I guess, utility of this cursor. So if you create a new object, it appears exactly in the spot where the 3D cursor is. So I guess you could start making objects by adding different objects and just stacking them on top of each other. And maybe I want to make a door, I just make another cube, and maybe scale it a little bit, and make it appear as it should be a door or something, and then I position it, and I guess it kind of looks like it might be a door. And later, if I maybe apply a texture or a material to it, then it really looks like their door. But still, like the basic structure of these objects is still the same. If I want to make something more complex, then I definitely have to go to the edit mode. But yeah, if you mess something up, then just delete it and make a new one, or undo it if you have undo commands. So let's start with the cube. We go to the edit mode. First of all, for the roof, let's start with the roof. I guess you could like shape it a little bit if like this perfect cube is a little bit too boring. I guess you could like also scale it in edit mode and like make it a little rectangular shape. Awesome. But now for adding entirely new geometry, because previously we deleted it and filled it in, but adding new vertices. So basically, if I move one vertex around, there's a straight line and then comes another vertex. But if I want to make an entirely new, let's say face in this place, then I have to add vertices to the same model. And all of those commands you can see on the left side if you press the plus button. There are tons of commands just for adding some sort of geometry in different ways. Some of them are similar, but they are under the mesh tools usually, or most of them are at least under here. So we'll visit this panel a lot. Okay, for the roof, let's say I want to make a roof shape like this. Awesome. Basically what I need is more vertices. I need a vertex here and here, or at least I need a vertex here that I can fill in like these parts. For that there is this command called Extrude. As you can see, there are many different types of extrudes, but currently it doesn't really matter if you pick region or individual. Just pick one of the extrude commands, and then many different things happen. If you move your mouse around, then you can see that it actually did add entirely new geometry. But maybe a confusing part in Blender is that it really depends on if you, after the command, if you press the right or the left button. If I press the right button, now I'm currently not holding down anything, but if I press the right button, then it appears that nothing happened. But it actually did. It did add the geometry, but if I press the right button, then it cancelled the move command. So actually the extrude was many different types of commands combined. So it basically made some geometry, and then it was possible to move it basically. But if I press the right button, then it said that I didn't want to move it, but actually if I select the topmost face, then I can still see that it did add the new vertices and faces to this model. So basically before it was like this, only two faces, but then I extruded and then I had a new face.
They are different bodies, as I understand.
No, it's the same surface basically. It's just the same surface. For example, if I go to the object mode, then it's just still one object, but it's just added some like sharp detail, I guess. Yeah, but if I do the extrude command and then I press the left button, then it keeps the height I just assigned. Basically, if I press the right button, it cancels the movement but retains the extrusion, and if I press the left button, then it converts the change in height. So basically, if you start your extrusion and halfway through you decide that you didn't actually want to extrude it and you press the right button, then you should definitely also undo the command by pressing Ctrl Z, because if you don't undo the command, then it's a little difficult to, I guess, imagine it in real world terms, but currently you can't really see it, but exactly in the same place there are two vertices and two edges and like three faces, I guess. So even like currently I can't really see it, I can't see it in object mode, but when I try to move this vertex, then it appears that there are some double vertices, two vertices exactly in the same place. So this is really, really bad. You don't want it, never, ever, really. Because it really like messes up your modeling, and if you like continue modeling something else, maybe then it's still some sort of mess in this place, so it's really bad. So just try to avoid it, and if you didn't want to make that change, then just press Ctrl Z and it will go away. Awesome. But now for the roof. We still want that extrusion. You can change the height later, it doesn't really matter. I'll just make it some sort of height. Awesome. And now if I want to make the slanted roof, shaped like this again, then I don't really need two vertices in here. I guess I could do it in this way, that I scale this face. I take the scaling tool and I scale these vertices together, so that it kind of resembles like this sharp roof. So I guess that's one possibility. But if I want to make it like really, really sharp, and I don't like need this face in this place, then yeah, sure, I guess I could like scale it so close that it appears as it's not there. But there the smartest option is to completely delete this face basically, and merge or join these two vertices into one. So again, there are many different ways of doing it. Basically, with this knowledge you have currently, you can already model anything, absolutely anything, like you can imagine, just by deleting, moving, and adding. For example, with the extrude command, you can basically make every shape conceivable. Like for example, one option would be that I just delete these vertices. I move these vertices to the center, and you know the fill command, so you can choose 4 vertices, press the F button, and fill these faces in. So basically, by just deleting, filling, and adding vertices with any command, really, even extrude, you can already like model anything basically. All the other, absolutely every other tool is just to make the modeling process faster, a lot faster usually. So yeah, but if you can add vertices, delete vertices, and join vertices, then you can make anything. So yeah, this was like the slow and not so straight, as you can see, method. But if you did the extrusion and you still have these four, all this quad face, then there is another command that merges or joins two vertices. So that's basically like many operations in one. You either like delete a vertex and then join the rest of it, or use one command for just joining them. And a little bit down the list, there is this command called merge. Also, it's not as easy as it would appear. There are many different ways of merging different vertices, but currently I just want to merge them in the center. So it's still symmetrical. So if I merge these vertices to their center point, then it should be still symmetrical. So I pick merge and at the center. So basically it merges the vertices at the center point of the selection. And if we click it, then hopefully you will get a triangle in this end, and you just repeat that command in the other way around. Merge at center. So basically now I have something that kind of resembles a building, at least a roof of a building. So, any questions so far? Any mishaps or not? Excellent. So the extrude command is like really common. Probably every 3D program that exists has this command, probably also named extrude. There are a lot of commands that are also available in all the other 3D programs. Sometimes they are like named a little bit differently, but probably you can find all these commands also in other 3D programs. So yeah, if you like learn the basics of 3D using Blender, for example, then learning another 3D program is usually a lot easier. If you know one, then you probably know them all, at least in some extent. Awesome. So let's say I want to make an even cooler house. Let's say I want like this, maybe this little part that comes out from here and also has this slanted roof. So basically I can't do it with at least not with one extrusion command, because if I select this face and I want to extrude only this part, then I can't really do it, because if I extrude it, then it will extrude the entire face. So basically I need a face shape like this, for example, in here. So if I extrude this face, then it extrudes only like the part I want. So again, we need some way to add additional vertices or split these faces. Another command you will probably use a lot is called loop cut and slide. Loop cut and slide. Again, this command is composed of several different parts, and you have to do some left and right clicking in the right order and some scrolling maybe, and it's awesome. But basically, if you select this command, then you can't navigate your window anymore. So basically, if I want to make this shaped face, I navigate the view so I can see this part. I click the button loop cut and slide. So currently it appears like it didn't do anything, but now it depends on the edge I hover over. So if I hover over like this horizontal edge, it will show with the pink line that it will cut through the geometry in the other direction. So if I want a horizontal cut, then I will go to the vertical line, and if I want a vertical cut, I will go to the horizontal line, and so on. So basically, dependent on which edge I hover over currently, it shows like the preview of what it wants to cut. Second part, I can scroll my scroll wheel and make more or less cuts. So for example, currently I want to make 2 cuts. Part 3, if I right click, then it will disappear and it will do nothing. It will cancel the command entirely. But if I left click, then it will actually make those edges, but now I have the ability to move them around for some reason. Now if I right click, then it will still retain the new vertices, but it will snap them exactly in the middle. But at that stage, if I left click again, I can move them around. I left click, and it will also confirm the like the translation of the new vertices. So yeah, now I have a new face in here. Basically, I have new faces. Maybe I didn't exactly need these faces over here. I just needed this face, but just for now, let's say it's good that also these faces appeared. Yeah, so I have this face, and just don't forget that you can still select these other parts, and you can just move them around if you want to make like the roof higher or lower. And also these edges, if I want to make the new walls or new parts of the building like wider or narrower, then I can still move these around and just select them, and you can move them around. So let's say this is perfect. I want exactly this width and this height. Awesome. Then I can select this face. Now there is a already familiar command called Extrude. I set the length of this part. Let's say this. I can still move it around freely. But now for the roof part, the principle is the same. I still need vertices in here to create the triangle shape. And again, there are like tons of different methods of doing this. But maybe the easiest, you can also do it with the extrude command and then merge them and then fill these in. But you can also do it with look on the slide, for example. Then I will cut through the entire house basically. Right click, and now I can just move this edge up a little bit, and I will get this roof.
Mis funktsioon oli just praegu?
Still the look cut and slide. And now you should probably right click to like put it in exactly in the middle of this part. And now you can move it. But now I have a slight problem, because if I want to move it exactly in the height that the other part of the roof is at, then I can't really do it, because I don't know how far to like move it. So probably I need to input some sort of number somewhere. I have to check what's the height of this part, and then I can input that height for this part also. And if we come back to the this right side panel, press the plus button, and this the content has changed also a little bit. Before I had these 4 transformations, and now I have only 1, and it says median or just vertex. So a concept that's a little bit difficult to grasp and maybe also not necessary at this stage. But there is a major difference if you transform your selection in object mode or in edit mode. Let's say I transform it in object mode. I turn it, for example, like around 45 degrees. Then now I can also come in the right side panel and change it here or just put it back. But if I do the same thing, if I select everything and I do the same thing in edit mode, then I'm not actually rotating it anything, or I'm not actually scaling anything. I'm just changing the position of the vertices. So basically, if I rotate it, I can't take it back because there isn't a value, there isn't a rotational value, and there is no scale in edit mode, because in edit mode there are only just position of the vertices, and if I want to take it back I have to do it with undo, and if I don't have any undos left then I just can't take it back. So it's really important, if you model something you have to decide if you transform it in, if you just want to transform the whole object, if you do it in object mode or if you do it in edit mode, because the effects will be different. So yeah, but just for now, let's say we just do it in edit mode if you want to. Awesome. But yeah, for the height of the second part of the roof. So basically we can see transform. There are two buttons, local and global. Currently it doesn't really matter what we choose, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't. But here you can see the coordinates of the selection, and it says median. We can actually only see an accurate, location of a vertex. But if we have many vertices selected, then we can see the median, the average of those locations written down there. So yeah, we have to check how high is this vertex. It's some sort of point something numbers. We can copy paste it. If we click on it, we can control C and control V for those. Press enter, and it should be exactly in the height as that one. Yeah, so basically you just copy and paste the numbers from this part, from that part, and it's there. Yeah, there are tons of ways you can snap them or make them level, but this is probably the easiest to stand for them. And it works. You can also put some very exact numbers in here if you want to make it exactly that high or that low. Okay. So another concept in 3D graphics is that everything is always composed of triangles. Yeah, I can see a four-cornered face, but in the end the computer only computes in triangles. So what it means that if I have a face that has vertices that aren't on the same level, for example, this face has all its edges, all its corners exactly on the same plane, basically. It's like fat. But for example, this face does not have all its corners on the same plane, and that might become a problem, because Blender currently divides this face into it always does it. It doesn't show it always, but we can see it that it divides this face down from this edge, and we can see it's actually two triangles. But that's a problem, because on the other side it divides it in a different direction. So let's say I want to make this shape, I don't want to fill this area, for example. But just by random chance, I guess, it divides this face actually in this direction. So it basically fills in whole this space. But I want it to look like this. So every time you have a face that has vertices that aren't on the same plane, you should really think about should you put them on the same plane, or should you divide this quad face into two triangles by manually, because also different programs can divide it in different ways, and even if it looks like okay in Blender, then if you load it into a game engine, it might divide it in some other direction, and it's a mess. So yeah, basically we want to manually divide it down this way and this one down this way. You might assume or suggest that we just select these two vertices and press the F button, right? It works. Yes. Awesome. And same thing other side. Oh, it didn't work. Why? So actually you can't do it in this way, because if you already have a face, then it creates a entirely new edge, and it doesn't divide this face into two, but it creates an entirely new one. So basically, even if it looks like it's working on this side, it really isn't, because if we select the face, then we can still see only one face and an entirely new edge. So this is also a really bad thing to do, also a very common thing people do, that there are some geometry that's still laid on top of each other, but you don't really need it. So for dividing a already existent face, there are also many different ways, but maybe the most fun way for you currently is using the knife tool. The knife tool is awesome. You can create new geometry just by clicking on some places, and it will draw you exactly the same an exact shape, and also create new vertices and divide the appropriate faces. So for this one, we choose a knife and we just click on the most top vertex, the most bottom vertex, and then we just press enter. And now, as you can see, we have two triangles, not just one quad. And the same thing on the other side. Press knife, click on one vertex. The icon actually snaps a little bit and changes. Like if you look really closely, you can see that it snaps on the edges and also on the vertices. So it should be a good idea to just pick only the vertex. So if it has like this little red square around the green squares, then it says that it snaps on the vertex. So yeah, click and enter, and awesome, it did it. So yeah, this is probably before. Also, I guess we could do it like yeah, I guess we could do it like that also. We could also do it with merge. As you can see, now here we have like this edge that's like really useless because it doesn't add to the shape of the object. So basically we could also do it by selecting this vertex, selecting that vertex, and merging them together. But now we don't want to use the center option, it will merge them center, but we can use, yes.
We have programmed the knife tool.
Okay, hold on. but we could also use there's like that first and that last. There is also the order in which you select objects and vertices and edges is also important. If you select many faces, as you can see, then the last selected face is colored a little bit differently. So whatever I select last, it's lighter. So basically, if I use the merge, if I select two vertices and I use the merge command, then that first and that last refers to the order of selection. So basically, if I selected like this vertex last, I select this one and then shift click this one and select merge and that last, then it merges the first vertices to the very last one. So we could also do it in this way. And I guess you could just clean the model up by just merging all of them to the, because we don't really need these vertices. They're useless. They don't add to the shape. We don't want to move them, and they are pretty much useless. So I guess you could remove them, but you could also keep them. So it's like for the computer, the less geometry there is, the faster it can like process the model. So you should always like basically delete all the unnecessary vertices, faces, if you don't. Questions? Küsimusi, ettepanekuid, kommentaare?
korraga maadleme selle katuse loomisega, aga see oli põhimõtteliselt see kätt oli, mis me alguses selle katuse seal oli see vist, et esmalt tekitad välja vaatamine.
Kõigepealt pressid välja, siis lükata selle kokku.
Ja põhimõtteliselt selle Extrude'iga sai uue ja seda täpselt seda prognoosime oma tuulel. Aga põhimõtteliselt see vaatab koordinaatidele, et kui sa valid need katsuski, seda peaks valima kesk. Praegu ta siin näitab seda keskmist, ehk siis punane X-teil ja tema koordinaat on see. Kui kopi pasteerid selle peale, isegi kas ta on kõrgel. aga selle punktis oli Liidiga, võtame pidada. Selle eest valid
põhimõte on siin selges, et see võtab sellest on ju
Excellent. Some of you have managed to find some new fun tools also. But yeah, basically for the house, I guess you could add some windows and maybe a door. You could also do it in many different ways, for example with the knife tool. But if you do it with the knife tool, then it's maybe a little more difficult to make it like straight angles, but not impossible. For example, let's just pick this side. Also for navigation purposes, you can turn on and off the perspective. So basically, maybe some parts are more easily viewed in with orthographic view, and some are viewed with perspective, but you can change it under the view. So it's called view perspective orthographic. Shortcut is number 5. You can turn it on and off, and also left, right, back, front, bottom, and top. You can align the viewport exactly like along with the axis basically. So for example, if I turn off the perspective, I press 3 for example, or some letter on the numpad, then the view turns exactly in line with the axis.
Question.
Yes.
Is it possible to set multi viewpoints in the same time? Basically, like in CAD program.
Et ta nagu salvestaks ära selle?
Ühesõnaga, et oleks võimalik mitme teine suhtes korraga vaadata. Kas seda võimalik?
Yeah, if you want to view the same model from different views, then unfortunately I guess there is no preset for it, but it will probably involve adding additional 3D windows and changing the viewpoints in those. So I guess we could do it. It might get a little messy, but yeah, we can do it. If you want to add, or it's possible.
Okay.
Like Blender has probably the most flexible UI I have ever seen among 3D programs. You can make as many windows as you want. You can make them floating windows, for example, and so on and so forth. I can make like as many windows as I want. Like some programs have some sort of limitations, like how many windows you can make or something, but you can like scale them in any size or make them as many as you want. So yeah, that's great, I guess. But yeah, if you want to make new windows, then there are many options, I guess. But every window has this little triangle in the top right and bottom left corner, and if you click and drag it, then you can make make new windows, and I guess you can just assign different sites. Yeah. Today, if you like model something in here, you can look for example in here and yeah, but to like it's not very comfortable way, I guess, because you can't really like merge them and it gets a little bit messy if you don't know exactly what you're doing, but it's possible, yes. So let's add some windows and doors. Main possibilities, I guess you could also add entirely new object for a door, but let's say for a window, let's try to use the knife. So again, from the right view, you can, from the view menu, you can pick those views. And currently it's probably a good idea to switch off the perspective, because if you try to draw something with a knife tool from the perspective view that's not in line with the axis, then it's like really difficult to it's really difficult to make it straight. So yeah, orthographic view from the side, I use the knife tool, and yes, still it's pretty difficult. Like, how do I know it's like exactly 90 degrees? I could just add an object that already has corners that's 90 degrees, but the knife tool, or like many tools, maybe even all, have some additional features that are not turned on by default. So if you look down here, by default it's empty, or you have these buttons. But if I activate the tool, then some additional features appear. So basically, for example, if I press the button E, it says the shortcut in here and the effect. So what I currently want is angle constraint. So by default I can draw it in every which way, but if I press the C, the letter C, then the angle constraints turns on, and if I draw it now, then it constrains the tool by 45 degrees. So now it's pretty easy to like draw a square. Oh, well, not exactly that easy, because like the last point is still like off, but I can fix it manually later if I just move this point as high as this point. So yeah, basically many tools have some additional features, for example the knife tool. Yeah, I could also do it by let's say if I use the cursor, for example, I can also add geometry to this object. If I now go to the add menu, then I can see only the mesh type objects, because this object type is mesh, and I can only add the same type of geometry with it. For example, I could add a plane. I could turn it, not that, I could turn it, and I could scale it. I could move it, and basically now I already have this perfect square. But yeah, with the knife tool it's also pretty okay.
Is it possible to copy paste for example Windows objects?
Windows.
Any objects.
Objects. Yeah. I'm not sure if there is a button for it. There it is. There is the button in object mode. It's called duplicate. Shortcut is Shift and D, and also in edit mode there is a little bit down the line. It's duplicate also. Yeah, Shift D. So basically, if I select this window and duplicate, then it duplicates the geometry and also it enables me to move it. So by doing it this way, I can get the exact same shape, but it's a little bit more difficult to like make it part of the wall, because now it's like an entirely separate piece. It's not connected to the house in any way, because now I can just, for example, extrude the window in. Then I have this like inset, and actually there is this command called inset. For example, if I use inset, it creates this border. It's basically the same as extrude, but later it doesn't move it, but it scales the selection. I can use this one. I can, for example, extrude it inward. Maybe I can like make this frame by also extruding this part. So I have this like extruded part and also this part that's like extruded inside basically. But when I copy this part, then it's entirely separated, and then I have to like merge it to the wall. So basically, currently, if I extrude it in, then it's not possible because it's an entirely separate piece, and this face is still there. So basically, if I want to make it by copying, then I still have to make it, but then I have to delete the old face and then start building up the new face. Mille kokku? Nad peaksid ennast ise ära ühendama. Selles mõttes, kui sa lähed siia, nagu seda mõtled? Või millega ühendama?
Sulgeb kontuuri.
Kui tahad ära lõpetada, enterit võtame. Lihtsalt vajad enterit. Mis ta peaks selle ära lõpetama? Topelteks. Yeah, triangles can be good, but also can be bad, because for example, if I want to make an horizontal cut, then with loop cut and slide I can't do it because there are triangles. But yeah, if you have like joined it all up, then you can again like maybe extrude it inside and it will work. I guess an easier method is just add a cube and let's say it's a window, so it's like that's also a possibility, I guess. You can't make like extrude it inwards because there is this still a wall, but it kind of works. So yeah, I'll give you a few minutes to figure out in which way you want to make your windows. Yeah, great point. If you want to see through the object for some reason, and then there are several different shading modes available. If you're working with textures or something, then probably the material and texture is appropriate. But for modeling, it's sometimes useful to see the wireframe version, so you can change between wireframe and solid. It's solid by default, and wireframe is like the see-through. We're soon out of time, but a few words. Usually in different programs, when you model or for example if you do some different commands, there is some sort of history, and I don't mean like the undo history, but a history that you can later change the stuff you made. So basically, if I add, let's say, another object, let's say I add a cylinder. This cylinder has many faces, but just right after you add a new object, it's possible to maybe change some parameters of that. So on the left side hand panel, right in the very bottom, actually this panel has also two sections, like this part has these modeling buttons and the different categories and stuff, but it also has this bottom part, and this bottom part also shows you the last command you made. So basically last command I made was I added a cylinder, so it says add cylinder, and here are some parameters I can change. For example, it says vertices, and I can change how many sides does the cylinder have. And a not so good part is that this is the only place where I can change the sides, because after I, for example, move it just a little bit even, then the last command is translate, and now I can't change how many sides the cylinder has. Like now it's just not possible anymore. So basically, if you make a new object, then right away you have to decide like what's the resolution gonna be, because even like undo doesn't give me that option back. Then it's just undo. But the great thing is that, for example, if I extrude or something, then I can also change some parameters. So for example, I extruded. The command is called actually extrude regional move. So basically, I can move it from here also, or I can. The rest are not actually that important. But yeah, basically you can change the parameters of the last command from this panel. But yeah, for example, if I use the insert command, let's say I pick this face, I use insert faces, and for example, if I want to know how wide this insert is, then I can just write down the thickness, I guess, or like input a specific thickness, 0.2 for example, and now I can on the other faces I can also make the insert and write down 0.2, and they should be these faces should be as wide as the other one. But yeah, there are sometimes some sort of parameters you can change from this panel. Yeah. So inset is great for like making borders on the windows or on the doors or something. So yeah, basically modeling is a bunch of hundreds and thousands of lines and vertices you have to somehow manage and not to mess up. But let's say this house is as good as it's gonna get in this time. And just to demonstrate another side of 3D modeling, a really quick one, and hopefully a little bit more fun than this thing was. Let's add another object. For example, if we want to make a landscape, like these hills and I don't know, rivers and this like organic looking landscape, then a big part of 3D modeling is sculpting or 3D sculpting, where the principle is still the same. We add vertices, we take vertices away, we move vertices around, but we do it using the very different tools. And for that one, let's add a plane. So basically add a mesh, and just plane. So plane is like a flat surface, like a plane, for example. Let's add a plane, and let's imagine that this is the starting object for our landscape. Let's say we want to like add some maybe some hills over here and something. Let's position it somewhere around where the ground should be. Maybe the house is too low or the plane is too high or something, but let's just put it somewhere roughly around the place. And let's scale it larger. You can also change the dimensions and scaling from the right side panel. For example, I can put like 20 in all the axes. It's a flat plane, so it doesn't have a Z axis, so it doesn't really matter what we put here, but yeah. Okay, so basically we have a large plane. Great. And now for modeling our little landscape. Let's see, we have this mode called sculpt mode. And this is where all the sculpting happens. So let's just enable this. And as you can see, all the panels, at least on the left hand side, is extremely different than from the 8 mode or from the aux mode. And also around the cursor we have now a little red circle, and basically it designates the brush size. So now you could think of your cursor as a brush, as a digital brush, for example, and you can raise or lower the surface of some object. And you don't have to do it, but just for a quick demonstration, I'll add a sphere, for example. Okay, sculpt. All you need to know is you have your radius, how big the brush is, and you have your strength. In this area, the vertices are like raised, or if you choose the subtract, then they are lowered. And strength is like how much are they lowered or raised. A strong brush or a weak brush. You have your radius, strength, and you either raise the surface or you lower the surface. You have different brushes. If you click on the icon, you can see some different brushes, but let's just for now, you should be able to manage with just with the sculpt, draw, and maybe use smooth, but yeah, you can try them all. But currently we have a slight problem with our plane here, because when we enter sculpt mode and we start sculpting, nothing happens because we have 4 vertices in either corner, and if I sculpt in the middle, then nothing happens because there are no vertices I can raise or lower. If I come over to this vertex, then it raises, but that's it. Küsimusi? Põhimõtteliselt, et basically we need many more vertices inside this square. I'll do it. Fortunately, the sculpt has an option to do it automatically. It's called Tyn Topo. It's written here. It's a little checkbox. If I check this checkbox, then I can draw on the surface, and as you can see, if I enter the wireframe, then it will create more vertices. Subtract, lowers it, add, raises the level. Maybe a little bigger and maybe a little bigger. And if it gets a little bit messed up, then the smooth brush is usually a good way to smooth it out. But yeah, basically with the sculpt brush, you should be able to, sculpt draw brush, you should be able to sculpt your little landscape. Also, you might notice that currently it's symmetrical, so basically if I paint on the right hand side, then it's all the other way around, then it appears on the other side as well. You can turn it on and off in the symmetry lock panel. I can also make it symmetrical in many axes. Currently it's in the X direction. I can change it to Y direction, or I can turn them both on, so I can just paint only a quarter of the model, and it will just add the rest. And you can also turn on the symmetry in all 3 axes. Currently I have only a plane, so I can't really show it, but yeah. For landscape, you probably don't want to make it symmetrical, but like for making faces and all kinds of stuff, then probably it's a good idea. For example, yeah. And also a nice thing about this brush is that if you zoom in closer, then it divides the mesh as much as it needs to get the same level of detail under the brush. So if I zoom out, I sculpt over it, it turns into lower resolution, and if I zoom in, then it gives me more detail. But yeah, you can just test out all the other brushes and have a little fun with it, I guess. Also, a snake hook tool is probably the coolest coolest tool ever. It's like always to like this kind of stuff. So yeah, you can continue with your sculpting activities and so on, but at least on my behalf we have finished our little building and our little world. So if you have any questions, then now's the time. jah.
kas ma saan neid kuidagi sisse tuua ja teha sellest ütleme 360 kraadi kujutise, mille ma pärast saan kas 3D printerisse lasta või välja reisida. On see põhimõtteliselt võimalik?
See põhimõtteliselt on täiesti võimalik. Põhimõtteliselt sul on skaneeritud, sul on mitu mudelit samast objektist.
Näiteks siukene asi, ühest küljest teisest kolmandast.
Okay. Tavaliselt mingisugune sama skaneerimise soft paneb ta juba ise kokku tegelikult. Et ta skaneerib ühest küljest, aga soft ise keevitab seda kinni. Et sama mudelit mitmes küljest Blenderis kokku panna natuke keeruline on. Mõnes teises spetsiaalses skulptimisprogrammis on see päris hea.
Mul oli selline asi, kus oli vaja teha sõrmele rahas.
Okay.
Ja Hans Lillemaa oli siuke mees, kui nimi mina mõtlen, kellega ma proovisin seda asja teha, aga ma ei saanud fikseerida.
Okay. Et jah, tavaliselt need skännerid teavadki, et nad teavad mis küljest, aga vähemalt mõned skännerid on mingi soft kaasas, mis keevitab ise kokku. Et põhimõtteliselt see on siin ka võimalik, see võib olla natuke problemaatiline, oleneb kui tihe see geomeetria on, see võib natuke piinarikas olla. Aga põhimõtteliselt see on jah, võimalik ka siin.
Siis on palju läheb välja. Ei ole see, et saab neid 3D skännisid põhimõtteliselt parandada.
Jah, ja just 3D skänne on selle skulptiga päris hea parandada ja muidida jätteviidi ka. Seda küll. Aga siis thank you and that's all for today. Thank you for coming and come again.